So the long list of consulting words basically means I concentrate on helping clients increase their revenues. So I'm a consultant for growth. And growth in the digital age is a new game. I started my career in Accenture, then I joined PRTM, that is a company very specialized in innovation in the digital age, started in Silicon Valley, and then 3 years ago PwC acquired PRTM. At PwC, I work in our digital offering team. So what I'm going to take you through this morning is our view on something that for us is very exciting, that we have codenamed "The World is in Beta." There is, in beta it is. So let's start with a video, just to give you some visual representation of what "The World is in Beta" means. The clicker is not in beta.
From the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, our lives are being transformed by technology. The pace of change is extraordinary. And with every innovation, that pace of change increases. Where some see disruption, others see a mobile workforce. The future of commerce. A more connected health service. The world's most secure transaction. The end of complex supply chains. Technology enables you to constantly create new competitive advantage. The world is exploding with potential. The world is in beta.
So for the software developers amongst you and people that are familiar with coding, especially the fascinating coding that the Baroness described of drag and drop and combining things, in beta means that everything is under constant change, because by the time you finish something, the world has moved on. And that's interesting because it means that adapting is more important than predicting the future. It also means that the time it takes to go from science fiction to science reality is shrinking a lot. So that means that technology is not just an enabler of business processes, it's something that is in the hands of customers all the time. The implication of this is that, of course, there are threats, but there are opportunities, and every company, regardless of sector, to some extent, needs to be a software company and a technology company. So how do you innovate and win in such an environment? So these are the three things that I want to take you through over the next few minutes. The first one is big trends around technology, business models, and behaviors. The second is dynamics of advantage and winning. And lastly, given these dynamics, what's different in the game of innovation and winning in this digital age? So let's start from technology. Technology is not just interesting in its own right. It's a must for every company to be more versed in technology, because technology is in the hands of the customer and because it changes so quickly. And today, technology is no longer just an enabler of businesses, it's part of the fabric of businesses. All these companies valued $1 billion and above, they have a fundamental technology component. So let's start from these examples. Self-driving cars. A lot has been written and said about self-driving cars. I just read this morning that Audi has made an announcement that they want to launch viable self-driving cars in Europe as soon as 2016. That's an example on how the path to science reality shrinks and accelerates. The interesting thing about self-driving cars, that's an example of artificial intelligence. For the ones of you who are very versed with code writing and software development, software code cannot solve some problems that are actually very simple in everyday life. So I'll give you two examples. Mowing a lawn or vacuum cleaning a room. There's no software, simple software that can solve these problems. You need a little artificial intelligence machine. On wearables, we all know what wearables do. The interesting thing of wearables is that they enable an economy of outcomes, not just an economy of products and services. Wearables create almost a fourth dimension in people where personal data are used as currency to achieve goals. That is a completely new game. And that brings home the message that digital is not just a channel to sell products, it's actually a new way of creating value. 3D printing, everyone knows about 3D printing. The facts that I would like to remind ourselves this morning is that with 3D printing, you can now do volume production, not just prototypes. You can create objects that are not possible to be manufactured with any other technology. So General Electric, for example, is volume producing pieces of jet engines with 3D printing technology. Biometrics, you saw some of that in the video, that is changing payments, and there is a fundamental trend of separating personal identity from personal privilege. So the days in which a police patrol will stop you, scan your iris, and tell you whether your driving license is valid or not, are not so far away. And on virtual reality, an example of virtual reality, augmented reality, I just read a few days ago that a startup in the US has created a virtual reality app that works like this. You're in New York, you go in the metro, I think that's what they call the underground there, and if you don't want to see the billboards of advertising, there is an app, you wear your goggles, you select on this app your favorite artist, and when you go in the underground in New York, instead of the advertising billboards, you see paintings of your favorite artist. Now that's a curious example, which means that a meta-reality is within reach. Now imagine the opportunities of companies that want to play with virtual reality. On more day-to-day applications, imagine an engineer working on a nuclear reactor or a jet engine with goggles that see colors and instructions on what to do. This can revolutionize the way to manage and grow skills in the workplace. Let's talk now about business models. So we mentioned already Uber in this event today. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes in any conference on digital nowadays for the Uber name to come up. We all think of Uber as a mobility service, a taxi-like service. The interesting thing is that if you had asked the black cabs in London and the yellow cabs in New York to analyze the best practices, probably they would not have come up with the Uber idea. What I like of Uber is that not just about taxis. It's about making units of assets identifiable, sellable, and auctionable. So if you have a fleet of lorries that go empty for 50+% of their time, then this business model can be applied to you. So it could be a new general business model for asset exploitation. I'm sure that most of you have come across Ello, a new social network. Their mission is to be very different from Facebook. And somebody before in the audience asked a question about privacy. Ello has got a promise never ever to sell personal data to advertisers. And in order to do that, they will charge a small subscription. What struck me of this business model, that this is the big data for the benefit of the customer. It's not big data for the benefit of companies, which is interesting in its own right. Because in the digital age, personal data is a currency. So Ello could be a business model of big data for the customer. The third one that everyone knows, if my clicker helps me, is Spotify. We all think of Spotify as a relatively simple pricing model because in the UK it's $9.99. But in reality, if you listen to a track for 5 seconds, Spotify will pay the artist thousands of a cent or a penny. Now, that is a powerful business model because it means you can charge atoms of consumption. And 3 days ago, Spotify and Uber actually announced a partnership whereby if you travel by Uber, you can play Spotify songs for free. So every Uber passenger is a DJ. And interestingly, when we leave meetings, we can see that the younger people call Uber and the older people go on a black cab. And that is just a reminder of my age, I'm afraid. The clicker is definitely not in beta. Right, let's look now at behaviors. The best way to simplify and summarize behaviors changes in people is to concentrate on what we call digital natives. Every morning, my children remind me that I'm not one. When I took my children out for a day out in London the other day, and they're not particularly technological children, and they're 10 and 12, when we come back home in the evening, they had videos of the day out with soundtrack. And they developed these videos with free Lego blocks from the internet that I don't know that even existed. And we come back home and they say, here is the film, the video documentary of the day out. I was taken aback. Anyway, the first sentence that you see on the slide is actually a quote from House of Cards, the Netflix show that I hope many of you have seen. If you like Kevin Spacey, there is the youthful character, the journalist in the serial that says to the much more experienced editor, when you speak to one of us, you're speaking to thousands of us. And then she sends a tweet that gets the editor fired. So there was a major reminder of how connected digital natives are. The second example is about biases on shopping habits, for example. People of my generation take for granted that shopping in person is better than shopping online. And shopping online, of course, is the choice, but is fundamentally a proxy of shopping in a store. Well, if you speak to digital natives, that's not necessarily the case. Digital natives want to experience a physical experience as if they were walking in a website, almost tapping on things, seeing information that emerges from products. And we have a video on that that will roll shortly. And the last point here is visual absorption of information rather than text-based. So I'm sure many of you know this, but I'm betting that some of you don't. The most popular search engine with the younger population is not Google, it's YouTube. If you look at younger people, when they want to look something up, they want a video, not a piece of text. So these are fundamental changes in behavior. We're now going to roll a second video. This is about a shopping experience in the digital age. This is a prototype we are developing. And it would be interesting as you go through this video to just ask yourselves, is this something that is 10 years away, 5 years away, or 1 year away?
Digital tools have made shopping a little easier, but they're not always connected to the physical world. What if they were? What if the store had a voice? Could it help you find parking? Recognize who you are? Remember what you like? Introducing Cart, a contextual shopping experience. What if the store could help you get organized? Tell you the best deals without you having to look for them? Could the aisles help you find your way around? The products know when you needed an extra pair of hands. Would it know what you bought all the time and offer to deliver them? Could the cart keep track of what you bought so there are no surprises later? What if the racks could tell you what other people loved? The mirror tell you where to find that perfect little dress and offer you an endless aisle of choices? What about helping you decide on the perfect present? Even if you're not sure which one? What if your cart could tell an associate where you were, what you were looking for, and that you needed help? Every item could tell you how much people liked it. So you could make a better choice. and get it home in time for dinner. The cart could even help you gather it all up and pay for it all with a push of a button. We think when stores have a voice, they'll have a lot to say. And they'll be more helpful than ever. If you think shopping has changed now, you haven't seen anything yet.
So 3 quick comments on this video. The first one is that this is not as far away as you think. The behavioral foundations and the technical foundations and the financial viability of this are already in place. The second comment is that if you think this only applies to retail because you are in a different sector, doesn't apply to you, think again. Equivalent examples to this can be described very easily for all sectors. And the last thing I want to say on this video is that if you think this is just front end and the fluffy marketing thing and selling thing on the front end, again, think again. Because a model like this has repercussions for logistics, for supply managers, for supply chain, for operations. This is an end-to-end change. Let's now look at accelerators, and some of these have already been touched by the interview with the Baroness before. I want to echo and reiterate the point of composable enterprise, as we call it, or Lego blocks. The best way to describe it, do you remember what the Baroness said that today you can code without writing too much code, actually, and getting free building blocks from the internet? That is absolutely exactly as she said. The best way to describe this, imagine that there are 2 groups of children. A group of children goes to a store where there are a huge array of Lego blocks for free. And there is another group of children that is building toys with tools and wood and chisels, all right? If you're a digital native today, you are basically in the first group of children. And you can build amazing apps and amazing websites, not even in days, but in hours. If you're not familiar with these building blocks, you think that technology is a slow process, right? So there is a huge amount of free building blocks out there. The second example is about technology. That's another bias. People of my generation take for granted that technology is scarce and is expensive. And that's why if you speak to technologists brought up with these principles, they are used to building what I call Formula One cars. They're systems highly coupled that extract as much power as possible from RAM, from storage, from clock, because that's the way you had to do it. But today technology is no longer scarce, it's abundant and affordable. Just to give you some stats, 1 terabyte of hard disk space in 1980, if you did the math, would cost you about $200 million. 1 terabyte of our space today, hard disk space, costs about $70, $75. The value of cloud-based public services is predicted to be, by IDC, about $130 billion in 2020. That is a compound annual growth rate of about 23% and accounts for half of all the growth in the IT sector. So the amount of explosion of technology is just staggering. And the mindset of thinking that technology is abundant is a non-trivial mindset. I bet you that many CIOs today still assume that technology is a scarce resource. And the third one is the one that I really like, is funding models. If you look at the black curve, that's what people of my generation are used to. They're used to funding innovation and then calculating the break-even point. And of course today that is still the case. But the difference is that there are freemium, as so-called freemium models, whereby software providers, application providers will tell you, if you're a startup, you can use my product for free up to a given volume. And if you don't make any money, you don't owe me any money. If you grow beyond that point, then you pay me then. Imagine what accelerator to innovation this is. Now, the Baroness touched on the diversity point. Apologies to all the ladies in the room because this slide doesn't have both genders represented. But the point for us is that in this digital age, you need diversity on a new level. Not only because of what the Baroness was touching on, that diversity actually correlates with performance, is even more profound than that, is that a lot of your digital talent in your organizations is encapsulated in the brains and hearts of young people who have no budgetary power and no hierarchical power, and you need to find a way to get them to contribute. Some companies invite digital natives to play an active role on their board meetings, for example. And in closure, here are a few thoughts that I would like to leave you with, right? In order to thrive and win in this world in beta, companies need to do three things. They need to become agile. We touch on the agility point. They need to empower talent, not only within the organization, but also customer and partners. Now, empowerment is an old word. It's not a new word. But in the digital age, you need empowerment that allows and affords degrees of freedom. Management by degrees of freedom is easier said than done, and most executives are used to quite severe degrees of control. And the third one is trust. Not only trust in the product, but trust in customer privacy and trust in your own information to make the right decisions. So the winners are thinking bigger. These are our closing remarks before the panel discussion. Things are changing so fast, and the vectors around us are so many, that I'm telling you, if you try to predict the future, the probability of getting it right is actually quite low. And also, best practices are helping less and less, because the innovation is beyond the horizon of best practices. So the winners are almost focusing on adapting to the future as it happens fast, rather than predicting it. We all know the notion of strategy comes first and execution comes second. But in reality, in this digital age, strategy and execution are in a peer-to-peer relationship, no longer in a master-slave relationship. That means that when something works operationally, that could enable a new strategy that you haven't thought about. So the way to give dignity to strategy and execution is changing. Startups have got an easier ride, apart from the funding, because they don't have constraints from legacy systems, for example. Well, guess what? If you're a big player, an established player, you need to have the courage to become a disruptor and to disrupt. And if you can't disrupt, then there might be a problem. I love this one. Many executives, when it comes to innovation, want a business case to the penny, to the cent. But they need to realize that at some point, inertia is a bigger risk than innovation. And culturally, that is quite difficult to do, because many executives make decisions driven by fear rather than by courage. And this digital age, unfortunately, requires lots of courage. And clearly, innovation, as the theme of this entire event, is absolutely fundamental to performance. So I hope that this is triggering some questions in your mind. Think, for example, if Steve Jobs today were in your organization, would he be able to survive and thrive? And the conclusion for us, which is something that in PwC we believe very profoundly, is that you don't need a digital strategy. Because a digital strategy might mean that there are two strategies, a digital strategy and a non-digital strategy. We believe that you need a business strategy for the digital age, not a digital strategy. So thank you for your attention. Apologies for going a bit over.